Hey y'all, this is Liberated Love Notes, a podcast on living corporate network hosted by yours truly, Brittany Janay, creator of Liberated Love Notes, critical self-reflections and affirmations for the culture. Y'all already know Liberated Love Notes is your source for weekly doses of reflections, affirmations, and reimagining for us by us. Y'all, I skipped a week. I missed y'all. Last weekend was heavy in the Juneteenth celebrations in my local area. I'm talking about street fests, Black-owned vendors, good food, music, community, art, all the things. Shout out to Dovecote Cafe, who did the damn thing, a local community first cafe here, Black owned, that hosted their annual Juneteenth community fair, community fest. Literally dozens of Black owned vendors. I later learned that there is no vendor fee. The owners of Dovecote literally just hold space, something about that I love, hold space for Black creators, business owners, entrepreneurs, artists to just show up and be visible in communities, sell their products, use their gifts and all the things. They hold space. Something about that I just loved when I learned. And so that is in part why I didn't get around to recording last week. I'm also on the heels of getting my 5-year-olds, cooties. And so leading up to Juneteenth, I ain't even had my voice, y'all. And so I was able to engage in some much needed rest, rejuvenation, feeling like I'm back to 100, and happy to be here, happy to be with you. Following the Juneteenth weekend, I was reminded of an affirmation, something like a liberated love note that I wrote this time last year, June 2021. Y'all, I wrote this affirmation to myself. It goes a little bit like this: my refusal is divine. Our refusal is divine. I wrote that June 2021. Shortly thereafter, I actually recorded a podcast episode sharing my reflections. I think it's episode 9. So y'all should go back and take a listen. That affirmation, that liberated love note, my refusal is divine. Our refusal is divine, was deeply inspired by the historical account of Igbo landing. How many of y'all are familiar with Igbo landing? I had found out about or had read about the story, and it resonated. For those who are not aware, the story of Igbo landing is a historical account of the enslaved West Africans who arrived in St. Simon's Island in Georgia. Mhm. As the story has been told, the Igbo people, those enslaved Africans, rebelled. They resisted. They took control of the ship, actually ended up capsizing it and drowning their captors. Some accounts recall the Igbo people following the rebellion, walking into those murky waters, led by who was their high chief. There are accounts that reference them in collective song, chanting, walking into the water, choosing to be at peace with the water than in bondage on this land. Mm. Choosing to be at peace with the water than in bondage on this land. Our refusal is divine. Our refusal is an intergenerational gift. Our refusal is historic. Our refusal is within us. Our refusal is divine. Far too often, refusal is associated with negative connotation. I've been re-reflecting on that. Far too often, our refusal may be deemed impractical. Our refusal may be deemed irresponsible, selfish, disruptive. Our refusal may be associated with or referred to as, maybe even neglect. But there is something about this story. There is something about the people of Igbo landing, our ancestors, that is just so palpable, that feels in reach. There is something about this story, for me at least, that feels like a gift, an ongoing affirmation, something like a liberated love note. Our refusal is divine. Heavy on the divine, deeply spiritual, beyond this world. Our refusal sometimes is beyond human understanding. Our refusal sometimes is delightful. Our refusal is light or from God. Our refusal is divine. I am affirming and reaffirming and affirming again that in this season, my refusal is divine. I recall moments where I know, I second guess my refusal. I recall seasons where I undermined my refusal. Mm. I was thinking literally about 2020, this situation I found myself in, y'all, in 2020. The beginning of what we have come to know as the global pandemic. I remember feeling anxious and fearful. I probably wasn't the only one. So much unknown. The institution that I was working for at the time was actually scheduled to do some travel in the sort of height of the beginning of the pandemic. I remember literally the day that I was supposed to fly out, my spirit just was uneasy. At that time, COVID-19, coronavirus, was referred to this virus that was impacting older folks. I don't know if y'all remember, but the elderly. And so I remember feeling weary that my travel, coupled with my proximity to my grandparents, might create some risk. I remember feeling a little bit weary that, you know, my ability to mother and be healthy for my son, there was just so much fear, so much uncertainty that I felt deeply impacted by anxiety. I remember sharing this with a leader, my leader at the time, that I was just uneasy, that I was afraid, and that I may not make it there. I might don't make it. I might don't make it. I remember feeling as though in that moment, my refusal was uncalled for, that my refusal was unnecessary, that my refusal was an overreaction, that my refusal was irresponsible as a leader of a team. What would they think if I refused? And so, yo, I ended up traveling anyway. I've been reflecting on that. Sometimes we can be psyched out of honoring our refusal. Sometimes we can be psyched out of uh, validating the origins, the real feelings behind our refusal. And I'm going to be honest, the whole scenario just hits different today, y'all. I'll tell you why. The whole scenario hits different today as I continue to process and grieve what was initially a fear. How might this impact my elders? It hit different as I processed the real reality that what was fear, biggest fear, came to pass as that virus deeply impacted one of the very people I sought to protect. Mm, mm. Our refusal is divine. Sometimes our refusal is foretelling. Sometimes the reactions to our refusal is foretelling. Fast forward, all of this has come up for me in this season, certainly this week. Fast forward 2 years later, refusal look a little bit different. Standing firm in my refusal feels a bit more real. My refusal is still divine. Specifically as I process not just what happened 2 years ago, but as I process what it means to have walked away from money with strings in service of my own humanity, authenticity, voice, freedom. I gotta remind myself, y'all, my refusal is divine. Cause sometimes I be checking in with self, like, girl, you dumb. Mm. Then I check in with soul and I'm like, yeah, my refusal is divine. Our refusal is divine. Like you listening, your refusal is divine. I have so many thoughts, many more thoughts and reflections around this affirmation, more questions than I do answers. And so I'm going to leave y'all with some of those questions. What does a refusal look like for you in this season? What has it looked like in past seasons? Maybe reflect on those moments when your refusal was undermined. How did it impact you? What might you have done differently to stay rooted and grounded in your refusal? Now, all refusal ain't created equally. And so we got to get real curious about what our refusal is rooted and grounded in. Is my refusal rooted in self interest or community care? Is my refusal rooted in profit or humanity? I know I'm usually about the both and still am. These are just some start point reflections. Is my refusal disrupting or colluding? Is my refusal a manifestation of loving discernment and clarity or unresolved trauma? Because those hit different too. In what ways are the spaces and places, people with whom I am in community, honoring the fullness of my humanity and being? And if they ain't, what does incremental refusal look like? I'm talking about those seemingly small shifts, those divine no's. Mm. There is so much agency and power in our refusal. My refusal is divine. Our refusal is divine. Legit. Your refusal is divine. And do me a favor. Don't let nobody, don't let nobody gaslight you into believing anything different. Peace, y'all.